Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As most of you know, I usually post time-lapse videos of me drawing some of my pieces. But today I'm going to try something new. I'm going to walk you through some of the techniques I use while drawing, and I'll teach you a little bit about the subject I'm working on. Meet Orbit. He's a male Kirby mantis. He's really sweet. Never really worried about him biting me. He's super chill and very curious. Most of the time he likes to hang out on my houseplants in the kitchen. Orbit is about 4 inches long and he loves eating crickets and roaches. In the summertime, I tend to have cabbage white butterflies flying around the garden eating my lettuce, so I catch him one or two and he enjoys eating those too. So that's a little bit about Orbit. So now let's move on to today's drawing. As you can see, I already have everything sketched out and ready to go. I usually use my iPad for my photo reference. Sorry about the glare. I like using the iPad because I can zoom in and look closely at the details that I need. For this project, I'm going to start with Orbit's eye. Okay, and for the first color, I'm using Jade Green. I'm starting with a light outline of the area that I want to fill in. Going to keep my pencil strokes close together and keep it as smooth as possible. Okay, I'm going to take my time and slowly work around the eye. I'm going to speed this part up so you don't have to watch me fill an entire eye for 10 minutes. All right, that's all filled in now. The glare on my iPad was getting pretty bad, so I printed out a reference photo for a clearer view of what I am drawing. Now, I'm going to focus more on the shadow parts of the eye. You can see there's a darker section about halfway down, and there's also an overall tint of yellow. So I'm adding beige on the top of the jade green. Next, I'm going to darken the shadows using 70% cool gray. Starting on the side, I gradually lighten the pressure as I move toward the center, focusing mainly on the shadows in the lower half of the eye. Not too much pressure here, just building it up slowly, especially along the left edge. Now I'm working my way up and around the dot. That looks kind of like a pupil. A little bit more here on the top of the eye. And now the lower. Next, I'm going to add some true green throughout the eye to introduce more of a turquoise green tone. All right, now I'm going to go in with a little bit of aquamarine. I'm going along the top of Orbit's eyes. Orbit always had these really pretty turquoise emerald eyes. Going back a little over on the shadows a little bit there. Now I'm coming back in again with my jade green and cool gray. A little bit more beige on the top. Okay. Now I'm going to focus on some of the highlighted areas here along the top of the eye And for that, I'm using a color called Gray-Green Light and a little bit of white. Prismacolors are wax-based, which is why layering works so well. So I'm just going to be going back and forth with the colors that I've been using until I get the exact tone that I'm looking for. A little bit of beige. Back with that gray-green light, beige. Okay, now I'm going to go back in and focus a little bit more on the shadows. Darkening up that lower part of the eye just a little bit more. All right, now I'm taking my black and I'm going to fill in that spot that looks kind of like a pupil. It's actually just where light is reflecting off of Orbit's eye. Praying mantis have compound eyes, basically lots of tiny eyes within a bigger one. Now I'm going to go back in with some of my greens. And as you can see, the eye is starting to look much smoother. A little bit of cool gray again. Okay, this is a colorless blender. It doesn't have a pigment, but it's fantastic for smoothing areas out. All right, I'm happy with that. Nice and smooth. Now I'm going to use my X-Acto blade and add details to Orbit's eye. I'm just going to lightly glide across the surface, barely pushing, just enough to lift up some of the color. And I'm going to try to keep the lines mostly parallel with a slight curve, avoiding the pupil area. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but with vertical lines, very softly so that I don't remove too much color or gouge my paper. I'm happy with how that looks. So next I'm going to use my electric eraser to pull out a few more highlights. I am stippling, just barely touching the surface to create tiny white highlights. I absolutely love details like this. using my colorless blender pencil, I'm going to lightly blend on top of all those highlighted spots I created with the electric eraser. I'm not pushing very hard at all because I still want to keep the texture, but I'm just softening the dots a bit. Coming back with my eraser, I'm now going to create a few more highlights, but lines, gliding again softly across Orbit's eye. Some crisscross lines. Now back to the colorless blender. Again, just softly running it over those lines that I created with my electric eraser. And I'm finished. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a few new techniques that you can use in your own art. Thanks for watching.